You're gonna have to turn. Hello. Welcome to another episode of Committed and Covered, All Things Marriage and Family Talks. As you notice, we are in here deep today because we are going to be in deep conversation. My name is Nicole Taylor.
And I'm Malcolm Taylor.
And our co-hosts with us today are
Rashid Taylor,
Yvonne Taylor,
Chantel Wise,
Joy Wise.
Yes, and so our topic for today, episode 2, is on Let's Talk About Sex.
Ooh, baby.
Hey. Amen.
Yeah, we rolling deep
starting
today.
already.
Yeah. And so we need your support. We want you to join us in the comments, in the chat. You can actually throw some questions to us or even pose what might be on your mind. Because this is one of those topics it's really tough, right? But here's the deal. I always keep it a little bit biblical when we talk about this thing. God gave us marriage out of the garden. This is after, when our parents were kicked out, right?
Yes.
So we got marriage in the Sabbath. And inside of marriage, we know that you are one. And God told us to be fruitful and multiply. And the only way to be fruitful and multiply, last I checked,
It is to
to have sex. And, today we're going to be talking about some things that might, be PG-17, but it's all in the lines of marriage, family, and tonight, this afternoon, we're talking about sex, right?
Yes.
And we're going to say that word, sex.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about sex.
Say it
We're going
again,
to say
Malcolm.
that word, sex. So that's why we're rolling deep. I mean, y'all, we rolling so deep, it's like we no elbow room.
Yeah.
But I like it.
it's all good. Look like the Last Supper up here.
It is. Or a new edition group. But anyway, like you guys know, I got my prop, and you guys know I'm always Mr. Right. And because she found Mr. Right.
That's right. And we're going to be as transparent as possible, but also we're definitely going to keep it real because this is a real topic in our marriages.
So, guys, put on your seatbelt and thinking cap and just join in with us about this sex thing. I think we already introduced ourselves, right?
We did.
Yeah.
Yes, we have.
We've got Rashid and Yvonne and Troy and Chantel. So I'm just happy. And this is Malcolm and Nicole all over again because some people are just now joining us. So, babe, are we going into the questions?
Yes, let's get started.
Wow.
We have an hour.
All right. We have an hour. Are you sure? Okay. You know what? Let's just start out like this, because we're talking about sex. But as married couples, guys, how do we talk about sex? Because I think, we just kind of say, hey, I'm married, we have sex. But we really do need to talk about it, And how do we talk about it? How do we broach that subject?
And so your question is, how do we broach the subject with each other as a married couple?
Yeah, I hope so.
talking
Yeah,
about
let's start with Mary, not other people.
Yeah.
Right?
We'll bring it to board meeting.
Not at meet and greet time. Say, hey, you all right? I'd be like, Rashid, you all right?
It's been a long week now.
Yeah.
But I would say, that's, I would like to go back to that. With that question, I think it has something to do with also how you were raised in your home. I think with Christians, it's talking about sex can be a taboo.
Yeah.
But I believe in your home, how you were raised, if you were you had open conversation about sex, that also could carry over into your marriage and how you talk to your spouse about sex. I know in my home with my mom, that was an open conversation, and I could ask questions. And so now, even in my marriage with my husband, we talk about sex. We even talk about sex with our children. So I believe that that's one aspect of it, how you were raised and brought up, especially if it was a Christian home.
Yeah.
It is a growth point too. It wasn't an automatic, I would say, to be comfortable about it because of two different upbringings. I was not so much a traditional Adventist home, but birds and bees were actually birds and bees. It wasn't like, let's talk about sex with our children. It was more of, hey, God made it and you know, almost figure it out, you know. So that's one of those things. Oh, I'm looking in the chat. So Deblair Snell tuned in from his layover. All right, brother.
All right.
Good to see you.
Be safe.
The man in the house. I'm glad you made that flight, brother. And go ahead, baby.
Yes, someone said we should have prayed because this is a delicate
Ooh,
subject.
sunshine.
And
Yeah.
sunshine, we did pray before.
Yeah.
So
We did, but we'll pray
did.
again.
Yeah.
Lord, be with us as we converse and talk about sex.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Yes.
We
Amen.
do that just for you, sunshine. All right. So yeah. So I think it's the upbringing. Like, what house did you come from? And I think that's really, really discounted when we start to talk about sex, because you have some houses where kids saw it all. You know, and then you have some houses where kids didn't see anything.
Yeah.
And so we don't know how to talk about it if we don't necessarily know our background and what we're comfortable with talking about.
And I think just for us now, I mean, as we speak currently, it's one of those conversations we try to have early and often, where we're talking about this concern, this issue, this thought. The last time I may have seen you in the way that I want to see you. You know, we try to have that conversation early often. Don't let a week or two go by and like, well, this has been on me. Try to have it early. Try to have it often and be transparent.
Yeah.
Why aren't we connecting the way we want to connect? So we try to have it early and often.
And I would have to say for me growing up in my household that it wasn't something that was discussed. It was never brought up. It was just kind of like, okay, this is there, but like Malcolm said, we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, so coming into the marriage, I was very uncomfortable talking with him about sex.
Yeah.
So that's something I had to grow into.
Definitely. Some of us. we
And
do.
someone says, even though the Sabbath is the day of rest, can you still incorporate
We're going to get
sex
right to it, all
within
right?
that day?
And, you know,
Out
Ruben,
the gate.
That's a
Ruben,
good
you,
question,
Ruben, you
Ruben.
know, we were going to go to that, right?
Yeah.
But you know
welcome,
that
Ruben.
that you started the fire before, you know, people see smoke. You know,
Yeah.
So yeah, Ruben, we are definitely going to touch that because that is a touchy subject, you know. And we're not saying everyone is wrong who says you can have sex on the Sabbath, and we're not saying everyone is right, but we'll establish that, right? Because it's one of these things. It's in the bonds of marriage, and you know, Pastor Taylor, we even started talking about that before, and we'll touch it. Okay, so Ruben, if we don't hit on that, and you know, in the next couple of minutes, come back to it. All right, we want you to stay in the chat with us, brother. All right, all right, Scott.
question
Yeah,
will be
I'm speaking on Scott. Yeah.
And I mean, we actually having some good questions
Yes, yeah,
already.
already.
Ann says that this is a topic that can only be discussed when we create a place of safety for honest conversation with each other. And that's definitely a good statement, Ann, because there has to be a place of safety when you're talking about it, especially if the other person feelings may be hurt by what you're saying. So it's a very touchy topic, but it's a topic that has to be had in a marriage if your needs are going to be provided for as well as your spouse's needs.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you know, we'll do that for you. Is that AIB or ALB? But we'll do that for you. How long have we been married? And you know, it's amazing. I'm wearing a part of our shirt. We've been married for 25 years, July 5th. Yeah. So
And we're wearing Nothing Makes Sense Without when we're apart. We've been married 24 years October.
Yes.
24 years.
24 years.
And we're not matching, but we're one.
You matching hearts.
We've been married for 17 years.
17 years. So
Yes.
25.
24.
24 and 17. So you got some experience here, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah, thank you for that. What we established.
And Nicole, you made a good point about it may be painful, and it's not even that you're trying to approach it in a painful way, but just as Yvonne mentioned, that if it's going from never talking about it to now I'm trying to constantly talk about it, especially early on, it may seem like I'm forcing her into an area that's unnatural, and so
Right.
she has to grow into her comfortability, and I have to grow into my patience, so that the conversation does become more and more comfortable.
I think it's a sign of like how intimate we are in our relationship, like how well we communicate, because you know, depending on your upbringing, this could have been a topic that's off the table. But just in general, a lot of times if we're able to kind of be upfront honest about how we feel about each other with different things, when it comes to sex, a lot of times that won't be any different. But then you have variations. Each couple is different. But at some point, you got to talk about it, you know,
Right.
because it doesn't just correct itself if we don't bring it to the table. So in our marriages, it is something that we discuss. And it's an ongoing thing because it's like you said, as you get older, as you get you age, as you start having children, you know, when children come into the picture, it can kind of change the whole game. And it can make it a bit confusing.
Yeah.
So, you know, we try to keep it on the table.
And you know, and audience, we want you guys to know we're speaking from the standpoint of a healthy sex life, and we know that there are different paths for all of us, and some of us may have experienced some trauma when it comes to sex.
Yeah.
But you know what? We want to let you know you can still have a healthy sex life or a healthy sex mentality, meaning that you can come into your marriage understanding that it's God's sanction, and then you work through this process of what sex looks like between you and your spouse. So we're going to throw that out there as well. So we're not going to be numb or insensitive to people who are struggling with certain types of sexual experiences that they may have had growing up or even as adults. So we want to remember that. And you know, Sister Anderson, she's coming back to where Al was about when did Adam and Eve have sex. And Sunshine, we're gonna come back to you as well. So yeah, I guess they won't let that go.
They
y'all.
won't.
No, they
won't let that
So
go. The people
So I guess
So
we're
it
going
seems
to have
like-
to go there. We're going to have to
It
go
seems
there.
like the people won't want to talk about we'll talk about Friday night. They won't talk about Friday night.
Yeah, they throwing all. They throwing all.
If we want to answer it briefly, succinctly, and honestly, Adam and Eve were created on Friday, and the Lord told them, be fruitful and multiply. Sister White describes Adam as being 18 feet roughly, Eve being 15 feet, and the Lord said, have at it.
Yeah.
So, and I don't believe stamina was an issue.
No.
Not at all.
So be fruitful and multiply in the afternoon
Stamina
or the
wasn't
evening
even
time.
invented.
It wasn't even invented, right? It didn't exist. It was just have fun.
Yeah.
I mean, happy Sabbath.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at it that way, in all honesty, Adam and Eve were probably consummating, as Pastor Taylor said, into the Sabbath evening, into the wee hours of the Sabbath, enjoying what we would call their honeymoon, right?
Yes.
This is the day that the Lord had made, and they were rejoicing and being glad in it.
Yeah.
As I recall, Pastor, the tree was the only thing that he said don't do. You know what I'm saying? So this thing about like, hey, y'all cut it out.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they created on Friday, like you said.
Yeah.
They getting it on,
Yeah.
and then he's like, stop. Like, I mean, I don't think that was.
Yeah.
You mean don't touch and eat?
Yeah,
Well, actually,
Well, see,
Eve
you bring it
doing
up.
the
Yeah,
touch.
stop,
You know,
stop.
God said don't eat from it.
No, that's good. And the Sabbath, the fourth commandment is very specific, right? I don't remember. I mean,
Yeah.
we rehearse it every week. I don't remember any
Yeah.
stipulations
No.
about you shall
Yeah.
not touch your wife.
And you know, guys, the thing about it is, I'm talking to my ladies and my men when I say guys. The thing about it is, we have polluted sex to the point where
Yes.
we can't look at it as something God given and God ordained.
Right.
I mean, you guys, look at it like this: sex is as important as your sermon on Sabbath.
In your marriage.
Yes, in your marriage. In your
Yes.
marriage. Yeah, all right. Thank you for that. Because what God has told us, right? Adam and Eve were covered or enshrouded by a light, right? And that light, when you read in the Bible, the other light that we read about is in the throne room. And no one could approach that light and go into that light but Jesus. And that's where we get the verbiage like to know. Adam knew Eve. Adam went into Eve's light. So the Bible, it sort of explains that to us. Now, that's a little more eisegetical, meaning like I'm drawing that out. But he went into Eve's light. Eve went into his light. And they consummated together and they knew each other. So guys, that's nowhere near perversion, right? So since that's nowhere near perversion, that is God's sanction. And that's what God wants. Because for me, when I get to heaven, all I want to be is in the light.
Amen.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm quite sure Adam was like, let me stay in the light.
And then I believe this is a topic too we'll be on for hours talking about it. So really, you know, you have to do what's best, decide for you in your home. Like as for me in my house,
We're gonna have
we
sex.
go the Sabbath is open for sex.
Yeah, because
The Sabbath is open for sex.
Ann Chester said, what is a healthy sex life? And I'll let everybody throw in their 2 cents. But I say a healthy sex life is agreement in the marriage.
Right.
So that's all I would say. Anybody
I
else?
agree with that. I think a
Yes.
healthy sex life, you know, they have different, research on that and what's average. And I think it's maybe once a week or something, but don't get confused by that because, you know, you have various things with a marriage. You have people with disabilities. Like what Malcolm said, it all comes down to what is good for us. That's the big thing because, if what's good for me is not good for you,
Right.
that's
unhealthy.
That's unhealthy.
And I
Exactly,
think
yeah.
for me, it goes beyond numbers, of course. The number of times that you have sex, to me, that's kind of irrelevant for what I'm about to say. I think it's more so just having, being able to have open communication about your likes, your dislikes, trying to figure out what pleases your spouse and being willing to do those things. So just having an open dialogue about, about your the things that you desire within your bedroom with your spouse. I think that also is a part of having a healthy.
But if we're really gonna keep it real, we know we have to ask ourselves: are we looking at quantity or quality? And oftentimes in a marriage, we're looking at quality, the number of times, the frequency that we have sex. That can be an issue in a marriage. If you go back to when you first got married, of course, if you didn't have any kids, you were more frequent. With having sex. You were frequent. And then if we look at the different stages, then you have kids, and typically around that time, we start slowing down just a little bit because of the kids, if you're working, and then different activities. And so we have to be more intentional around that time. So we have to look at the different phases, and even in those different phases, keeping in mind that we have to be intentional about our spouses, taking care of them, taking care of ourselves sexually with each other. And not allowing external factors to affect that because of what's going on at that time. So there's different phases that we go through in our marriage sexually.
And I think if we just pushing the Adam and Eve analogy a little further, Adam, after sin, noticed that Eve's light had gone out. And so I think as couples, intimacy is recognizing one of the things is recognizing that my wife's light has gone out, or my husband's light has gone out, and I'm trying to rekindle that spark. I'm trying to. So it's not necessarily about frequency. It's about, okay, what is it that keeps my spouse, my mate, charged and engaged in the relationship? And it's not always starting in the bedroom. It may start with a conversation at the breakfast table. That bleeds into some text messages throughout the day. That leads to the bedroom at night, where both of you are waiting for the arrival of the other, so that you can share this experience that you've been looking forward to since this morning.
And I have to say, after I had kids, I went through a time where I was depressed, I was stressed, I didn't feel my body was the same, and so it took a lot for me to get to that point. So that's definitely necessary to have that conversation about that. Making each other feel comfortable with it.
And I was gonna piggyback off what Rashid said about just if there's a disconnect. Like, see, to me, that's part of having a healthy, healthy sex life, because we should know when there's a disconnect. Like, we should know, And I know for us, like, sometimes we'll be like, okay, work has been crazy. We're stressed, you know what I'm saying? And then that definitely affects it. So we have to come back and be like, okay, something's gonna have to give, but usually when we have sex, it just gets better. It makes everything better.
You go to sleep better.
The best sex, man. The best sex, y'all know, is like after worship, man.
I love it.
Or at night when you both tossing and turning, and you're like,
it's some intimacy with worship.
That's right.
Like, but
So try worship.
We got a lot of activity from our Facebook family who is on with us. So some of our YouTube family may not see some of these questions and chats, but sometimes you have to call an audible. And we had questions, but guys, you guys are being so interactive with us. We can kind of stick with the crowd. Right?
They come in with, oh, look at that.
Yeah, because one of our person said that I lost the question, but it went away. But it's okay. I'll come to the oral sex. I saw what Deidre, I was going to read what Reed said, and he said this is a subject that we can be equally yoked on. And I got to be careful on that. And we're going to come to Deidre's question: is oral sex considered perversion? And I told you it's PG-17, but this is a little bit rated R. But anyway, guys, we said we're talking about sex.
We're talking.
And I think if you ask that question,
had the kids.
I think if you ask that question to 100 couples, you probably would get almost maybe 75 different answers, because that's one of those touchy ones. And we definitely. People think about defilement and things like that. But, know what, guys? It's what you pray about it. And even Paul talked about things that we do and we don't do. But it's the sanctity of your bedroom. Right. And what goes on in your bedroom goes on in your bedroom. So, we can't sit here and say that's wrong or that's right. But what we can say is you and your husband or wife, both of you guys, spouses, you have your checklist of what you're okay with. And if in your checklist of what you're okay with, I think that's your green light.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of times we try to pinpoint what's wrong or what's right or what's this or what's that, and you kind of have to ask where's the biblical root for this? Is there a scripture? Is there a practice? Is there a principle that I can trace in the Bible that says I should avoid this activity or I should engage in this activity?
Yes.
And then if you can't find one, if there's no biblical trace, then exactly as Malcolm said, have this conversation. Are you comfortable? Because it may be top 10 on your list, and it may be something your wife is like, no,
You see what Scott said.
More better makes it more better.
Well,
I love it. Come on, Scott.
We appreciate your support.
Yeah. But Rose asked, she said that we mentioned that a healthy sex life means agreement. Does that mean whatever a husband and wife agrees to is fine? Are there things that are off limits scripturally? Well, to me, with the healthy sex life, it is what you and your spouse agree and you're both comfortable with. If one person is not comfortable with something, then that's a discussion that you have to have. I mean, there's different things, that couples do, and so I remember a time, with
Go ahead, baby.
No, I remember a time, Malcolm, we were going to talk about myths and expectations, but his expectation was, sex every day. And for me, at first, I was like, really? Who does that? Like, really? But that was when we were younger, But
Malcolm did say it changed.
Read the same book.
I need
Max,
to
take a drink to that.
Plead the fifth.
My throat is
yeah,
parched.
but that was his expectation, and at that time when we were first married, that was not my expectation. But over the years, as we communicated and talked, with each other about our expectations, I was able to make that happen for my boo at, at times. But it's what's comfortable with you and your marriage.
Yeah.
I think.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I think it's important too because, from that question, we got to define healthy sex life, healthy marriage based on what standard. And so we're talking about a standard Bible. I just wanted to make sure that, like, hey, if we think it's healthy and it's okay, then can we bring in a third party? And that's not. I just wanted to get that out there.
Right.
Because what's healthy for you might not be.
Somebody may be trying to slide that in. Like
Yeah. There you go.
Actually,
So I think we have an understanding of that, but I just kind of want
right. No, because if anything that impedes oneness, right, our sexual relationship is a reflection of our relationship with God. That's why he used Hosea and Gomer, right, to kind of intimate that. So a third person is disturbing the oneness that God intends for your marriage to be. So you can't be like, we're gonna slide in sister so and so.
No,
everybody's consensual. No, that's not biblical.
And we got to keep it real. Go ahead, Chantel.
And I was just gonna say, just like keep in mind that everybody, like we have 3 couples up here. Everybody's sex life and situation is going to be totally different.
Right.
So I do agree with what Malcolm said. It's about agreement, So even though we're giving information, you have to be led by God and what works for you and your household. And I agree from a biblical standpoint. But just know that it's gonna look different. Like some people may do it every day. Some people it may be once every 2 weeks. Just if that's what works for you all, then that's what works for you.
Yeah, and Rose mentioned the same thing that you said down on the end, Choya, about there are some limits, and we are not saying anything can be done in the bedroom because pornography is definitely a no. Yes. Because now you're adding in an element that pollutes sex, right? Yes. So that's your checklist. I mean, how has sex been polluted? And pornography is one of the things that has really destroyed is sexually speaking. So you really need to be mindful of that, and you pray about it, and there's some no-brainer things, and then there are some things that are gray. So, guys, today we'd be here for about 4 hours.
We could really go with this one,
I'm
right?
laughing at Ruben asked, Ruben asked, has any couple ever played gospel music in the background to get into the music? That is a great question.
That's a good.
Yeah.
No,
Anchored.
no, I can say we have not, Ruben.
Oh no, now Fred Hammond has some jams that
Hey, but Fred has some nice ones.
Yeah. We appreciate that. We appreciate that. But we skipped over Sister Fox.
Sister Fox.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Rashi.
Is talking raw about sex and sexual feelings in marriage wrong?
Well, what do we mean by raw here?
Yeah.
Latoya, what do we mean
Yeah,
about
yeah.
raw? No,
Maybe how you truly feel,
Yeah. Oh, okay.
But we got to tread lightly on that. That's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to know.
Yeah, I
what
would
she
like
mean
to
by
know,
raw.
Latoya, what
Yeah,
you mean
Well, she
by
may
because
not
I
be able
wanna
to type it
or
Tell us, Latoya, what you mean about raw?
like,
in PG terms.
yes,
Yeah.
in PG terms.
Or it
Yeah,
could be
like,
like-
Eddie Murphy raw, or
Yeah,
like
no, PG terms.
open and honest, or
Yeah.
no, I mean, is she talking about
Oh,
get
gotcha.
dirty, or is
right,
she
that's
talking
what
about?
that's what I was thinking, but I could be
Yeah.
wrong. But maybe she'll clarify for us.
Yeah.
But I do want to add in piggyback off of what you're talking about the expectations sexually with your spouse, because to keep it real, there are couples that have deal with the amount of time that they do have sex. You have one person that want to have sex more, and you have someone that don't. So if you're arguing about it, if there's a disconnect about it, then there needs to be a conversation about it where both of you are in agreement with how often, the quality, that needs to be a conversation so both of you can enjoy each other. But if there's argument or discord, then that's an issue.
And the love language should be considered, right? If a person is physical
Yeah,
touch
that's right.
and your gifts, you may want sex less frequently than the individual who's physical touch, but it doesn't mean that either is less important or unimportant. Like, oh, girl, what I gotta do? Go buy you a dress for me to get? You know what I mean? So you gotta have that conversation,
Right.
as often as necessary.
Oh, I like
Rashid,
Joyce,
I'm gonna,
what Joyce says
I'm
there.
gonna, what Scott said, gotta have a part 2, 3, 4 through 10 on this topic. But Rashid, I'm glad you brought up the love languages because Troy can attest to this.
Okay, what's up?
So like for real, like when the love languages are being met, especially at least I know for me, like it ain't no question about brothers going down.
Use
the
them
road.
love
You know what I'm
languages,
saying?
man.
The love
Use
language
it.
is that for our guys out there who your wives may not be, giving it like you want them to give it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Find out what their love language is and try to heed to that. And I promise you,
Yeah.
you're gonna benefit from it.
No, that's
You're gonna
yeah.
benefit from
It
it.
might sound corny, but it
Yeah.
works. Like
No, but
love
your check
languages.
engine light,
That
right?
joint
Yeah,
works.
Yeah, that check
Right.
engine
Yeah,
light. When that comes on, you got to pay attention
Yeah.
to that.
Because like
Now,
if Troy wash the dishes,
Yeah.
it's going down.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
There you go.
Sometimes I
Speaking of
forget.
spouse.
that is funny because
Dummy.
we are both physical touch, number one, and we're both quality time, but the translation or the dialect is different. Like I gotta rub them feet.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? I gotta rub her shoulder.
Yeah.
I gotta
That's
to
right.
give her
take.
some attention.
It's a give and
That's
take.
right. Yeah. I can't just
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's important to understand that we're built differently as men and women,
Yeah.
and that's not a thing to where we need to be critical of one another.
Amen.
If I get started up, some men it may take them some time, some women it may take them some time, but we just got to respect where each other are
Right.
and not make that a negative thing. And I think that builds the intimacy too.
Yeah.
Right,
Well,
and-
Joyce Anderson said a quickie in the morning lasts all day.
Come on now.
Right. We appreciate that.
Well,
comment.
but
Pop
since,
tart.
Can't be mad at
Yeah.
but since Miss Anderson brought up a quickie, I think back to when we had kids. When your life is so busy with a lot of different things that you have going on.
Yes.
Quickies are okay in a marriage, until you can get more of a quantity later on. But quickies are okay
Yeah.
if
But
you're being
Anything to keep it
Well,
going.
but
We don't
so-
want to OD on it though.
And I just want, and I'm gonna say this because
He said we can't OD.
when you say the word, when
Never
you say
too
the
much,
word,
never too much.
When you say the word quickie, a lot of times that refers to the man just being able to get what, but the quickie has to work on both sides.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
We
It's a
should
give
you can't
and
just
take.
right.
You can't
It has to
just-
be-
I'm not
right.
understanding that.
Right, it's not a drive-through.
And so,
No, it's not a drive-through. It's just a quickie to hold you up, just to hold you up.
Okay, so I Raw Latoya shared with
Yes.
us. I am taking over.
No, man. Go ahead.
Be quiet. Raw Latoya said it's just being real and about how you feel.
Absolutely.
Yes, and we talked about that a little earlier, Latoya. That you want to be real with your spouse about how you're feeling, to have that open communication. And it might be rough at the beginning, but as you work through it, because everybody, I have a certain
Wait, she said a little bit more.
Uh-oh.
Did she-
Expressed without using the pretty nice words, R. Kelly
Kelly.
style.
Wow.
Oh.
You know,
Okay.
Okay.
We done, that's a twist
different.
there. That's a twist.
Yeah.
I don't want to co-sign anything R. Kelly style.
no,
No, me either.
we can't step in the name of that.
But my mind is telling me no.
Yeah. Just stick with that.
But we really do have to be careful with Raw. And the reason why I say that, because
Yeah.
even from the marriage counseling standpoint,
Yes.
we have to tread lightly. Like let's talk about sex, right? And if a person is too quick, right? Usually that's the man, right? So the wife, if she says you're just too quick, that's too raw. Right. So if we could just say, babe, what can we do like to just make things longer? I mean, I would like this. What do you think?
Yeah.
You know, so it's kind of like being raw. Sometimes we have to be, you know, on the candy cane side.
I think
Yes.
being raw too, it depends on how that has been working in your marriage.
Yes,
You know what I'm
yes.
saying? Like if y'all have an understanding to where you can just be raw about anything and then that works,
Yeah.
then maybe go ahead. But for a lot of brothers, like you just coming like that is too raw. It could cause some complications,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
moving forward.
Right,
You know,
right.
so I think that's important.
And some people are still waters, and some people are Babel Brooks, where they don't talk. One don't talk about anything, and another talks about everything.
Too
So you
much.
gotta understand
Yeah.
the person's comfort level, as we kind of touched
Right.
on in the beginning of our marriage. My wife was not one to say a lot, and I was one that said whatever. And so it has whenever, and it has to consider her comfortability.
Yeah,
level.
yeah,
It has
yeah.
to consider her ability to share and feel understood and seen, not just told what to do.
Yeah.
And I would like to add this point too, as a married woman. You know, sometimes in our marriages, we may leave our husbands hanging, you know, because we say we're tired or we've done all those things. And that is true. We can be tired. We can be overworked, all those different things, cooking and working, all those things. But ladies, I have to say, and I don't know if you know, help me out in the chat, somebody, you know,
Yeah.
that's not good for us to do that with our spouses. We want to make sure that we are pleasing and satisfying our husbands so that there's no doors open for anything else to step in and happen. And I remember I was in a book club, and we were reading a book called, I think, The Care and Proper Feeding of a Husband. And it was talking about, you know, as Christian wives, you know, that, you know, we need to take care of our husbands and vice versa too, the husbands. But she talked about if your husband comes home and he's still looking at you as if it was day one and that he's longing for you, then you need to make sure, you know, you're taking care of your husband. And that just really resonated with me because I thought about my husband. And it just made me, you know, think about the times where I may have turned him down because I was tired. So I just wanted to say, you know, we really need to just make sure that, you know, we take care of our husbands. And of course, our husbands do the same for us.
And I will add to that, Nicole. That's a great point. And I want to speak to the husbands just from a standpoint of, you know, intimacy with a woman, you know, especially after having kids. Our bodies change, you know, sometimes we don't
Real
feel
talk.
we don't feel as secure with our bodies as we did before children. And so, you know, we bore your children. So, you know, find something attractive about us, you know, you know what I'm saying? And help build us up as, you know, as women, because we kind of lose ourselves a lot of times. And that can affect the intimacy as well. Because some women, I've spoke to some women, they don't even feel comfortable being undressed around their husband because their body has changed so much. So like it's so many dynamics, but like husbands, you know, just tread lightly and be gentle with your wife, especially after she's had kids and she's trying to get her body back or whatever. And sometimes they don't go back, you know.
That's right.
But still love her. Like Nicole mentioned day one, can you still love us like you loved us day one?
Right.
After having those kids.
And Sister Anderson saying,
Yeah, I saw
Sister
that.
Anderson, let me
Sister
just
Anderson.
say
Come
this.
on with
Yeah.
it.
I'm speaking from the woman's perspective,
Yeah.
but that's also the same for a man as well.
Yeah.
When I made my comment about making sure that we take care of our husbands, because of course, true, sometimes the men slack in taking care of us sexually. So let me just put that on the table here that I'm speaking from a woman's perspective, but also, men do the same thing for us too.
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah,
true. Because
yeah.
Latoya said your husband will understand when you're extremely tired, which is true. We thank you for that.
She also said, "I am ever ready, not leaving anything to say."
Yeah.
Better
But
be
no,
safe than sorry, right?
there is a give and take, right?
There is a give and
It
take.
is, you understand that it's not an on-command activity,
Yeah.
but you stay ready, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
be sober and vigilant, looking for the opportunity.
Like the second coming.
Sober and vigilant.
waiting on that great given morning.
Yeah, I think it's easier when we're in the mindset that our bodies are not ours, and that we're here to serve. And I think when we have that in mind, we're more sacrificial. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Sometimes, the tiredness and things like that can, we both have to be compassionate of each other's needs, but sometimes maybe those things can get in the way when we're just thinking of ourselves, especially if it's a persisting thing that's happening all the time. You know what I'm saying? So, just when we're trying to look out for each other, it gets a lot better.
Yeah, Scott said, if we stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
Stay ready.
I love
God
it.
is a prophet when it comes to
There you
that.
Yeah, man, I need to write down these quotes
He's doing the
here.
Lord's work. He's doing the Lord's work.
Yeah, he is.
I appreciate it.
We kind of touched on our second question. What is
What is your norm? Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of touched on that. And, we're still fluid, guys. We got
Yes.
some more questions. But you want to say something? I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, when you talk about your norm, again, that's what works for you and your spouse. If you're both in agreement with it, not just one, but if you're both in agreement with it, that can be whatever frequency, for you guys. But I do believe it's something that both of you have to agree with or compromise on.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
And I'm just gonna put this out there. We say we're gonna be transparent. A lot of times it's not just about penetration. You can do other things, have other levels of intimacy with your spouse, where you may go all the way 2 days, but 3 of them days you're just holding each other and kissing
Doing
each
stuff.
other and you know what I'm
Right.
saying, doing some other things. So I just want to put that out there that it don't always have to be what they say, third base.
Yeah.
home base. Home base. That's home base.
Home base. Home base.
That's home base. That's home
Said
base.
somebody come get my husband out.
Oh,
this.
You're right, Tanya. Yeah, we praying for Scott.
Yeah.
But it's all right. Enjoy your spouse.
But Donna says if she is tired, let her rest, and then she's already same if he's tired.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
but
Good
Donna,
charge.
we worked that out too. We used to be like that, but then we got to, if I'm tired, you have to do all the work.
Okay. Hey,
You
compromise,
have to do
man.
all the work.
Marriage is all
You
about
understand
compromise.
for this to happen, you're going to do a little heavy lifting.
Yes.
It's just
Nothing
we
wrong
don't
with
need to just shut the show down.
Right.
Well, as she pointed out, there are alternatives.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And if
Yeah.
you want to come and reason together, you have to kind of work some things out. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. So with that next question, guys, and we're talking about distractions too. How can we intentionally prioritize sex with a lot of distractions? I think we talked about kids being in,
Yes.
and
Yes.
bills can really like
Come on now.
and just stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you just really have to be intentional. And I can only just, when I think about, when we had our kids and things, and you go like, oh, it's the end of the week. We haven't, and even I remember a preacher saying, put it on the calendar. Whatever you have to do, whatever you have to do to be intentional. Because, the devil is busy. And when you and your spouse aren't intimate, that opens a door. And so you don't want that door to be open. And even when you're going through trials and tribulations in your marriage, you know, sometimes we tend to not have sex because of what we're going through. But we withhold. But that's the time where you should draw together and still be sexually intimate, because you don't want to widen that gap of what you're going through. So I still believe that you should still be intimate when you're going through something.
And it may bring about some healing in your marriage.
Yeah.
You know?
It's some
Bring it back
chemical
close.
potency type of
Right,
treatment,
right.
medicinal things in sex.
Right.
Sex works.
Take some energy away.
Yeah, no. So I see Ann, and I'm of a very similar mindset. Ann says research suggests that frequency for healthy sex is every 72 hours, and so that prioritizing is we try to not to let 48 to 72 go without coming together. It's not that we're always successful, but coming from the school of thought that Malcolm had, like, it's every day. So to me, that keeps that expectation of frequency, but it doesn't become burdensome. And if we don't meet that mark, we don't meet that mark. But we're
And for some of us scratching our heads, 72 hours is 3 days. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not trying to everything, but like sometimes we're like, okay.
I mean, but you typically know your spouse's, you know, appetite. We tend to know that, and so of course, you know, if you're going past that time frame, you know, you say, what's going on? What's happening? You know.
Yeah. Somebody said, well, planned intimacy can be a turnoff. And guys, this is the thing. This is not cookie cutter. You know, this is
not a
unique.
prescription.
It's unique to you guys. Like, some of us don't need a turn on. You know, the turn on is like, I'm married to a person I love. You know, so I, you know, don't need clothes washed. Don't need, you know, a meal prepared. I don't. Hey, just walk. I see you. So I mean, but it's all different. And then we can't hold each other accountable for likes of others, right? And I'll break that down. So if somebody is talking, well, I rub my wife's shoulder, or I do this for my husband, we shouldn't look at our spouse and say, well, you don't do that for me. No, what we need to do is now have our own conversation. And what Rashid said, those love language tips.
That's very important.
And go ahead. And Malcolm, to your point, I like that because it's up to you to tell your spouse what it is that you want.
That's right.
Yes, that's that
If you want
communication piece.
Yes. Healthy communication. Tell them what it is that you want, and now if they don't do it, that's a different story. But at least you have verbalized. You're not expecting them to do something that they're not aware of that you even want. You know.
I think that it's true about the planned intimacy can kind of throw away some of the, you know, romantic or the passion and things like that. But I think planned intimacy is better than no intimacy. If we're not even making the calendar, you know what I'm saying, then we need to schedule. You know what I'm saying? But, you know, if we already got it going on, then maybe we don't want to be so.
So I'm glad Sunshine is saying what she's saying. Sunshine, thank you, because this whole 72 hours thing, you know, women, we have things that go on in our bodies that don't even allow us to meet that type of time frame. You know, we have the cleansing period. You know, so I agree with you, Sunshine, and I'm sure our husbands.
We gotta respect that. But as you pointed out, intimacy doesn't just mean penetration.
Exactly.
Other things can go down.
There's other forms of connecting other than just pulling into the garage.
Are we gonna talk about, like, if we can just not have sex? Is that on the thing?
You know, you presented.
I think he said.
Go ahead, they heard you. Go ahead, Charlie. What'd you say?
Oh, is it okay?
What'd you say, Charlie?
Well, I don't know if we touched on this, you know, but, you know, is it okay to just not have sex with your partner? Have we talked about that?
We have.
When you say not have sex,
like, some people,
intentionally.
there's sexless marriages. We're talking about the frequency and things, but there's a lot of folks out there that's not having sex
because they're refusing to, or because they can't.
Because I want to and you don't.
Well, that's a problem.
So
it's a choice. And so what is the it's just a choice.
It's a choice. Okay.
You're not meeting my needs for whatever else, so I'm not giving you sex, or vice versa. You know.
But you know, if one wants it and one doesn't, that's a problem, right? If both don't want it, but they're fine with the plain intimacy that they have, that's not necessarily a problem. But when it's one on one end of the pole and one on the other end of the pole, now we have a problem. We recommend marital counseling. When you have that type of problem, that's one of those fixes that you need, you know, a referee and sort
Right.
of a
Yeah.
spiritual referee.
Well, that goes with the text that we talked about earlier, Nicole.
Yeah,
Corinthians,
what does
First
the word say
Corinthians.
about it?
Which one you said?
It was
Chantel?
7:37. 1 Corinthians 7:33 through 34.
Yes, it says, but a married man is concerned about the affairs of this world. How can he please his wife? And his interests are divided. An unmarried woman or virgin is concerned about the Lord's affairs. Her aim is to be devoted to the Lord in both body and spirit. But a married woman is concerned about the affairs of this world. How can she please her husband? I am saying this for your own good, not to restrict you, but that you may live in a right way in undivided devotion to the Lord.
That's in
That's
the
the
NIV version.
That's the NIV version.
Okay.
Yeah, so this other version says the husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. Do not deprive each other except by mutual consent for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer. Okay, then come together again, so that Satan. I'm sorry, that's the wrong verse. Nicole, you read the right one. This is 1 Corinthians 7:3 through 5. I'm sorry. But anyway, it goes on to say, then come together so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control.
Right.
Wow.
So we talked
Yeah,
earlier about
write that
that
down, man.
that biblical foundation for what to do and what not to do, how to do and what to do. And there it is that the word of God is supporting that we're intimate
That we should do
often
it.
and
Yeah.
frequently. And unless it's for a spiritual reason where you're both trying to draw closer to God, and then after that fasting period, draw closer to each other after drawing closer to God. So it doesn't seem as if God, the same God who said, be fruitful and multiply, and husband shall leave and cleave, and all of those things, he doesn't seem to be supporting a sexless marriage by choice.
Yeah, by
Right.
choice. By choice. And I think that's an important thing to put on the table when we're having a sexless marriage. And I don't think that it should be used as a tool by any spouse to beat the other spouse up. But it's a symptom, like what Malcolm said, that we have deeper problems. And if we can't resolve this and get some sex on the table, then we need to go see somebody.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
We do, definitely. And Vanessa posed some questions as well. Is that Vanessa Bell, the singer?
I wanted the same thing for a second.
Yeah,
I'm like,
well,
she tuning in.
Oh, no, there's Vanessa. Hey, I think we teach our kids. Go ahead, baby.
She said, I think that we teach our kids to abstain and then expect that everyone knows what to do once they do get married. Where did you all learn what you like? Oh,
Oh,
Lord.
boy.
Yeah. You know,
That's a good
That's
question.
somebody mentioned R. Kelly earlier.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, I believe.
go ahead, babe. I was going to chime in
Go
on
ahead.
that.
I'll let you
I
go
mean, but the honest answer is trial and error because honestly, you know, we should be virgins when we get married, but
Right.
Yeah.
that's one of those fairy tale things in 2023.
Should be.
But you know what we ought to do is learn with our spouse.
That's
and,
right.
and with that clean slate. And you know, we've perverted sex so much, so we come in with this. We've already had so many partners, and we already kind of know what we like, and we expect our spouse to know it. But anyway, if we had that right mentality, and that is, sex is not perverted, and I learn what I like with the person I love. It's trial and error.
Yeah.
I tell my wife, baby, I don't like that. Let's try it.
What you gonna say,
No, I was
baby?
just gonna say I would agree with that trial and error, and then talk about it.
Yeah,
You know,
Right.
what
that's
do you- what
big.
did you think about that? What do you think? What do you? Let's try this next time. You know.
It seemed like too much work. Was that good for you? Was it
Right,
good? Not?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because everything you hear and see and think doesn't work for the both of you.
Right.
And so I think trial and error is the only way. I mean, you can have a conversation even before, but until you're actually in the activity or engaged in the activity, you
Right.
don't know if it's gonna be pleasing for both parties.
Right.
So
And
you
then
got
I think that's the piece too, when she referenced about your children, that's that open communication piece where your kids are able to come to you and ask those questions that they want to know. You know, like I said, I grew up in a house where I could ask those questions and they were answered. So, you know, we've made that available to our children as well.
Yeah, and just teaching your kids, like Nicole said, you definitely want to teach them to abstain, but teach them how to openly communicate. And so then we get to that trial and error piece. When they do find their mate and they become intimate, they're able to openly discuss those things that they like and dislike.
I think I work. I'll just full transparency. I work everywhere I work is with young people and young adults, and so we push abstinence knowing that, as Malcolm said, it's kind of a fairy tale, right? And but we only discuss abstinence, and so when they don't abstain, it's like, well, we can't talk about anything else. So I think as we're all saying, have this conversation. Point out why abstinence is best, why it's the Lord's desire that you know one wife and all of these things. But if you don't, these are the reasons why abstinence is successful. This is the reason why you should choose, because you bring a person into your bedroom that you may have never intended to marry, but now this person is a part of a conversation that's going forward, and they were just a one night stand, or they were just a weekend hookup, or they were just a summer fling. But you have the memory physically and mentally of this person, and you carry that into your marriage. So there's some benefits to abstinence that go overlooked, but it is the only conversation I think a lot of times we feel like we can have.
And Vanessa told us that she's an Adventist in Canada, and shout out to Canada. And thank you for speaking to the young people about, marriage wisdom. And, guys, that's one thing we kind of didn't touch on anyway. For our young couples and even our couples who are of age, I mean, you can ask some questions to people you trust. Hopefully, it's that mom or dad figure, or your actual mom or dad who can talk about it. But, when we have those types of questions.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, even for our singles, we talk a lot about, abstaining, coming from married couples, as you was mentioning, and and to keep it real, that can be hard, and you don't want to put yourself in situations where you're going to have premarital sex. So, that's something we can talk about.
Yeah, I don't think we talk enough about the other sides of why we abstain and the complications, and not just pregnancy, but, just when you do get married and things that you understand that you have to face. I think it's just so much to be learned about trying your best to, I mean, for instance, like a lot of times we don't talk about when we're having sex prior to being married, for some people, it ends up being a conduit to keep you in a relationship longer than what you should be in, because you have committed to this type of intimacy with this person. Maybe it was someone who wasn't trying to have sex with a lot of people. Maybe it was the only person that they had sex with. But now things are not working out, but we keep connecting, and now I'm creating something that I really know shouldn't be going anywhere. Whereas if I was sober, a lot of times we don't understand what goes on in the brain when you have sex. It's like being on a drug.
Right.
So you're not sober-minded when you're thinking this relationship
Correct.
is working, and so those things too.
That's good.
Yes. I think her name was Mel. She had a question about, I think you said Mel sleeping in separate rooms
During your
period.
during
cycle. When her cycle is
cycle.
up.
I'm sorry, if you're on your cycle.
Yeah,
There
that's
it
one of
is
those.
right there.
In the Bible, it does give us some of those things that men and women should do, and it did say that in the Bible. But it was really speaking to cleanliness and trying to keep the camp clean, as the children of Israel went through the wilderness. To keep down on certain things. So, guys, it's 2023. And we know that when ladies are on their cycle, we don't have to sleep in a separate bed because of hygiene. We can handle those things now. So I think really that's how I would answer that. I don't know about anybody.
No, that's 100%. The practice goes with the principle, and so the principle there was to slow down infection. There's so many alternatives now that weren't available to them. Showers,
sanitary napkins,
the
whole nine.
So the what was available to them, it was available to them, and so that was to preserve it perfectly.
Yes, guys.
Well, and I saw.
Did you see what someone put about him and his wife waited and the benefits of it, which I think this hits on a little bit. I think it was right here, Ruben.
Awesome. Ruben.
Ruben says that my wife and I waited until we had sex before marriage. It was well worth it. Things we didn't know about was tough at first, but we coached each other through it. That's what I'm
beautiful,
talking about.
man.
Yes,
So
Ruben.
that goes along with
We need you on the panel, brother.
Oh, yeah, you funny because I almost thought we were going to have to censor Ruben. Ruben put some
Ruben,
stuff
yeah.
in that chat. I was like, hold on, Ruben.
I'm ready for you, Ruben.
It's like
and I-
PG-17.
And I want to add to what Ruben said. So we didn't wait, and it was a struggle, and we worked through it. So if just try to wait.
Yeah, yeah.
Try to wait. It's worth it.
You're
It's
right.
worth it.
And I appreciate Ruben
Yes.
because someone else said, why don't we encourage men to wait? And Ruben is a shining example of a man who chose to wait,
Yes.
abstain until he and his wife got married. And the journey that they made was one together. He didn't bring his sexual baggage. She didn't bring her sexual baggage.
Yes.
So they made those discoveries together. As he said, it was tough. So I think it is kind of hard. And we did, full transparency, we didn't wait either.
We
I
didn't
tell,
either.
I tell people all the time, and I'm dead serious, my son
Yes.
walked my wife down the aisle when we got married.
Go figure.
Yeah, how did that happen, right?
But again, as Chantel said and Troy said, it's some things that we wish we had
Yes.
waited for, and this was a conversation we didn't have as strongly as I wish we did. That she really wanted to wait, and she was concerned that I didn't. And so she, things going too far, she
Wow.
didn't say,
Yeah,
I'm spiritually, I'm trying to wait until you're my husband instead of just pretending that you are. So
Yes.
those are conversations that you have to have early and often, and we may have avoided some heartache, some headache if we had.
Well, I
And
know
that
we,
goes-
no,
That goes back to not putting yourself in those positions to have sex before marriage, because it can happen, and all of us have stated here on this panel that it happened, and so we.
What position?
So and so we're not just saying this to singles just to be saying this. It's coming from a group of people who have experienced this, and we're saying wait till you get married.
It's a lot of expectations when you haven't waited, and maybe you have a history and things like that. Like with Chantel, it could cause things to be complicated. So we think that hey, and it doesn't happen for everybody, but you got a deep enough past, it can cause some complications. And then when you come into your marriage, you're thinking like, oh well, shoot, when I get married, then it's just gonna be that like that,
Yes.
and then it's like no, it's not.
Yeah.
This is what is right for a marriage, not something that you
Right.
saw somewhere or thought.
Guys,
Yes,
we're
yes.
already down to the 3-minute mark. That's amazing.
Wow.
Wow.
Yes.
And Dwight, I mean, we don't want to skip over your question, but is it okay? Well, remember,
Well, his question is it okay for husband and wife to sleep in separate rooms due to different sleeping patterns?
Right. And be mindful, we're not giving you guys anything like, we're not going to say yes, no to these things because, hey, we have a friend who does surgery. He's a cardiac surgeon, and the days that he has surgery early in the morning, he sleeps alone so that he can get his rest. No one can wake him up. But things are unique, right? So Dwight, you got to understand, if you guys are sleeping in separate beds 300 days out of a 365-day year,
Maybe a red flag. Maybe.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah.
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 And so as we prepare to close out, guys, let's give them at least one tip of things that we've discussed today when it comes to sex in your marriage as a married couple. What do we want to leave them with as we prepare to close out?
Okay, I'll say have fun. Get wild with it. Have fun.
Have fun, definitely. And just keep God number one.
Yes.
Because He'll help you to work out the kinks. When He's in the center, whatever seems like it's just gonna be a mess, He'll get it right.
And I will.
I know that sounds cliche.
No,
but
and
it's
it does,
real.
but we actually put that to test because we were hitting some walls in our marriage, in our sexual life. And I remember us actually praying one time before because it's like we just couldn't connect, but we took the moment right then and there. We prayed and that was like
When you pray
type of
and you
magic
bring
or something, you know,
intimacy,
so-
yes,
That's
when you
right.
pray,
it's awesome.
He'll lead you in
It
all
does the
truth,
business.
even sexual
Yeah.
truth.
That's right.
That's real. I
would
would
say-
go ahead.
No,
No,
I would
baby.
say communication. Communication is key. Talk about everything and just work through it together.
Yeah. And I would just add, no pun intended, that your sex life is tailor made for you.
Yes,
Nobody
there
can
you
tell
go,
you
yeah.
how it should be. It should fit you like a suit
Absolutely.
made personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no one that can guide you on your sex life better than you, except
Yeah.
for God.
That's
Yes, ma'am.
right. And I would just say that if you are not in one accord in your sex life, that you need to talk about it, so that both of you can be fulfilled and be happy and content in your sexual life, in your marriage.
Yeah, yeah. And we thank you guys for joining us. And I guess for me, I'll say God made it.
Yeah.
So if God made it, he knew how he made it enjoyable, guys.
Yeah.
And I do know there's some perversion, like we said, or yeah, same time next week. But God made it. God
Yes.
made it. So just
Yes.
remember that, guys. If God made it, he can keep it correct in your marriage if you allow him to do that, okay?
Yes,
And we
and
thank you
so-
for joining us.
And so our next topic, episode 3,
Drum roll.
will be on roles, expectations in the marriage, okay? And so
Not
we
role
will,
play, Ruben. Not role play.
That's right. But roles and expectations, and we will air again every third Sabbath. We kind of got away last month because of camp meeting and different things, but we will see you guys on episode 3. Thank you for joining us.
All right, guys. And remember, share this with somebody and come back and see us third week in a month of August.
Yeah.
Yes.
We love you. Bye-bye.